My name is Marissa Hale, and I was 34 years old when I finally realized my family didn't love me for who I was, only for what I provided. From the outside, my life looked enviable. I was a senior analyst at Crawford & Associates, 12 years into a career I'd built from nothing but scholarships, sleepless nights, and sheer stubbornness. I lived alone in a downtown Seattle apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline that still caught my breath some mornings. No roommates, no chaos, just order, silence, and control. And yet, my phone never stopped ringing. Family requests had a way of finding me, no matter how busy I was. I could be knee-deep in financial models or preparing a presentation for a 7-figure client, and still, "Marissa, can you help? Marissa, we need you." My boyfriend Ethan noticed it long before I did. We'd been together just under a year, long enough for him to see the patterns, but not so long that he'd learned to ignore them. "You're allowed to say no," he told me once, watching me answer my sister's call at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. I smiled and kissed his cheek. "It's just family." That was my favorite excuse. It was a Wednesday afternoon when everything began to shift. I was at my desk, coffee cooling beside my laptop, reviewing a client presentation, when my phone buzzed. Lauren, my youngest sister, 28, cheerful, effortlessly adored. "Hey, Riss," she chirped the second I answered. "Got a minute?" "Sure," I said, already minimizing a spreadsheet. "So you know Mom's turning 65 in 6 weeks, right?" She paused, dramatic as always. "We're planning something really special, but we need everyone to chip in." When she named the number, my fingers froze over the keyboard. It was more than I'd spent on my last vacation, which, embarrassingly, had been 4 years earlier, and technically a work conference in San Diego. "I know it's a lot," Lauren rushed on, "but it's for Mom." "I'll send it now," I said automatically, pulling up my banking app. "Perfect. Oh, and make sure you take a full week off work. Don't plan anything else during that time. It's really important." The request struck me as odd, but I agreed. I always did. The weeks blurred together. Client meetings, deadlines, late nights. Occasionally, I wondered what my sisters were planning with all that money, but every time I asked, they brushed me off. "It's a surprise, you'll see." Then came the Saturday dinner. We gathered at my parents' house in Bellevue, Mom, Dad, my sisters, Aunt Patricia, and my cousins with their kids. The dining room was loud and warm, filled with familiar chaos. Dad telling the same fishing story he always told. Mom fussing over plates. The comforting illusion of togetherness. Halfway through dinner, Lauren cleared her throat. "So," she said casually, pushing food around her plate, "we finally booked Mom's birthday trip." The table erupted. "A whole week at Mountain Ridge Lodge," Bethany said, eyes sparkling. "Hiking, ziplining, spa days." Mom beamed. Dad laughed. Everyone talked at once. I blinked. "Wait, what?" The chatter slowed. "You're all going?" I asked. "Why didn't anyone tell me earlier? I don't even have hiking gear." Silence settled over the table like a held breath. Mom cleared her throat. "Actually, sweetheart," she said gently, the way she always did before asking something unreasonable, "we were hoping you could do us a huge favor." My stomach dropped. "We thought it would be perfect if you stayed back at the lodge with the kids. You're so good with them." The words didn't register at first. "You want me to babysit?" I asked slowly. "All 6 of them?" Lauren's son, Bethany's baby, my cousin's kids, 6 children under 8. "They love you," Mom added, as if that explained everything. I waited for laughter, for someone to admit it was a joke. No one did. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "I want to celebrate too." Bethany sighed. "You'd be bored anyway. It'll be noisy, crowded." "Bored?" I repeated. Lauren smiled thinly. "She just means you don't have a husband or kids to get away from. The rest of us need this break." The words landed like a slap. I stood up so suddenly my chair scraped against the floor. Without another word, I grabbed my purse and walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother murmur, "She'll come around. She always does." The night air was cold against my face as I reached my car. 12 years of being the reliable one. And this was my reward. By the time I got home, Ethan was waiting. One look at my face, and he knew. "What did they do?" he asked softly. I sank onto the couch, the weight of it all pressing down on me. They planned a vacation, I said, using my money, and they expect me to babysit while they celebrate. His jaw tightened. And you? I said nothing, I admitted. He took my hands. Marissa, that's not okay. I nodded, but even then, part of me still believed I could fix it. I always did. I barely slept that night. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling of my apartment while the city hummed below, replaying the dinner over and over again. Every word, every look, every moment I'd missed before but couldn't unsee now. They love you. You'd be bored anyway. It's not like you need a break. The phrases stacked on top of each other until they felt less like explanations and more like a verdict. A role they'd already written for me long before that dinner ever happened. Ethan slept beside me, one arm slung protectively over my waist, but even his steady breathing couldn't quiet my thoughts. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, memories started surfacing, uninvited, relentless. Me at 18, cooking dinner while Mom sat with Lauren at the kitchen table, helping her fill out college applications. Me at 20, turning down a summer internship in New York because Bethany needed help while our parents went on an anniversary cruise. Me at 23, working 2 jobs after grad school so I could help pay for Lauren's wedding when her budget ran over. I'd told myself it was temporary, that family helped family, that my turn would come. It never did. By morning, I convinced myself there had to be a reasonable solution, something that didn't involve confrontation or drama. Something that let everyone win. So I called Mom. She answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful at first. Hi, sweetheart. I've been thinking about the lodge trip, I said carefully. I really want to be there for your birthday. That's good, she replied, relief already creeping into her voice. So I had an idea, I continued. I can pay for a professional nanny, someone vetted, experienced. That way, everyone gets to celebrate together. The silence on the line stretched, just a beat too long. That won't work, Mom said finally, her tone cooling. We don't trust strangers with the children. They wouldn't be strangers, I insisted. I can find someone with excellent references, background checks, whatever you want. You're overcomplicating this, she snapped. They're used to you. Mom, I said, trying to stay calm. I want to enjoy your birthday, too. A sharp sigh. You're not exactly a social butterfly, Marissa. All that noise would probably overwhelm you anyway. The kids will keep you busy. You like being needed. The words stung more than I expected. Before I could respond, the call ended. I stared at my phone, heat crawling up my neck. She hadn't even said goodbye. Minutes later, it buzzed again. Lauren. How dare you, she hissed the second I answered. I'm trying to help. No, you're trying to ruin everything, she shot back. We've been planning this for weeks. Everything is booked. And now you're being selfish. Selfish. The word echoed in my head. You want to throw a wrench into everything because you can't do one thing for the family, she continued. If you mess this up, don't bother calling me again. I mean it. The line went dead. My hands were shaking when Bethany's texts started coming in. Family needs to stick together. We all help each other out. You're great with the kids. They adore you. Why are you being so difficult? I typed back before I could stop myself. A real family doesn't make decisions for someone without asking. A real family doesn't use guilt to force compliance. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. That's when it hit me. The money request. The insistence that I take time off work. The vague answers whenever I asked questions. This hadn't been spontaneous. It had been planned. Carefully. Quietly. Without me. I wasn't included because I wasn't meant to be. I was the solution, not a participant. Ethan found me sitting at the kitchen table hours later, phone untouched in front of me. They're not backing down, are they? He asked gently. I shook my head. They never do. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You know this isn't normal, right? This isn't how healthy families treat someone they love. I laughed bitterly. They love me, just conditionally. He didn't argue. He just watched me with an expression that made my chest tighten. Concern mixed with something like sadness. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. That night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Holidays where I was always standing off to the side. Group shots where I was the one holding the camera. Memories I'd once thought were happy, now tinged with something darker. I saw myself clearly for the first time. Not the selfish daughter, not the difficult sister, the convenient one. The realization was strangely liberating. The next morning, while my family assumed I was falling back into line, buying snacks, rearranging my schedule, preparing to play nanny, I opened my laptop and did something entirely different. I searched flights. Within an hour, I had booked a beachfront resort in Maui. Nothing extravagant, just quiet. Ocean air, space to breathe. I upgraded the seat without guilt. For once, I chose myself. As I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Lauren. "Don't forget, be ready early Saturday. We'll drop the kids off first thing." I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I let the silence speak for me. I didn't tell anyone about Hawaii. Not my parents, not my sisters, not even Ethan at first. The decision felt too fragile, like a secret that might collapse if spoken out loud. For once, I wanted something that existed solely for me, untainted by expectations, opinions, or negotiations. The days leading up to the trip passed in an eerie calm. My family went quiet. No calls, no reminders, no last-minute demands. If I hadn't known them better, I might have thought they were respecting my space. But I did know them. Silence, in our family, was never peace. It was confidence. They believed the outcome was already decided. They thought I'd show up. Ethan noticed the change in me before I mentioned the trip. He watched as I folded clothes with unusual care, as I set aside sundresses I hadn't worn in years, as I bought a new swimsuit on my lunch break without once checking my calendar. "You're planning something," he said one night, leaning against the doorway of my bedroom. I hesitated. Then I exhaled. "I'm going away." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Where?" "Maui." He didn't smile. He didn't tease me. He just stared at me for a long second, then nodded. "Good," he said simply. That was all the permission I needed. The night before my flight, I cleaned my apartment from top to bottom. Not because it needed it. Everything in my life was always meticulously maintained. But because it felt symbolic, like closing a chapter. I emptied the fridge, took out the trash, set my out-of-office email. No mention of family, no explanations. Just, "I'll be unavailable for the next week." The morning of my flight, I stood in my living room with my suitcase by the door and took one last look around. The space felt different, quieter, like it was holding its breath with me. I slipped my phone into my bag. Then, deliberately, I turned it off. The plane lifted into the clouds, and with it, something heavy inside my chest finally loosened. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding myself together until that moment, until the obligation fell away and there was nothing left to do but sit and breathe. Hawaii greeted me with warmth and salt air and a sky so blue it felt unreal. The resort was tucked along the coastline, palm trees swaying gently as if nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. My room overlooked the ocean, a private lanai, endless horizon. I stepped outside barefoot and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. That first afternoon, I walked along the shoreline, letting the sand sink between my toes. I didn't check the time. I didn't think about schedules or bedtime routines or snack preferences. I swam until my arms were tired and my hair was tangled with salt. At dinner, I ate slowly. No cutting food into tiny pieces, no wiping sticky fingers, no negotiating over vegetables. Just me, a glass of wine, the sound of waves. Each day unfolded without urgency. I took a surfing lesson and laughed when I fell. I hiked to a waterfall and let the cool spray soak into my skin. I read an entire novel, cover to cover, uninterrupted. At night, I lay in bed listening to the ocean, and memories surfaced. But this time, they didn't hurt as much. They felt distant, manageable, like something I could examine without being swallowed by. Halfway through the week, I caught myself smiling for no reason at all. That scared me a little, because it meant this peace wasn't borrowed. It was possible. On my final morning, I sat on the lanai with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the water. I knew I couldn't avoid reality forever. Eventually, I'd have to turn my phone back on, face whatever waited on the other side of my absence. I expected annoyance, maybe anger. What I wasn't prepared for was the sheer volume. The second my phone powered up, it exploded with sound. Calls, messages, voicemails, one after another, stacking faster than I could read them. The timestamps made my stomach twist. They started early, exactly 1 week ago. Where are you? We're outside your apartment. The kids are getting restless. My fingers trembled as I scrolled. Lauren, Bethany, my cousins, my aunt. We brought the kids like we planned. Marissa, open the door. This isn't funny. I could picture it perfectly. Suitcases lined up in the hallway. 6 confused children clutching backpacks. My family standing there, waiting for a door that would never open. The messages shifted quickly, from confusion to panic. What are we supposed to do? You can't just disappear. Then to rage. You selfish witch. You've ruined everything. Mom's birthday is destroyed because of you. My mother's messages came later. I'm so disappointed in you. I never thought you'd do this to us. And finally, a single text from Dad. Your mother is crying. I sat there in that sunlit room, ocean stretching endlessly before me, and read every word. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay. Not once did anyone wonder why I hadn't shown up. They hadn't come looking for me. They'd come looking for the role I refused to play. I turned the phone face down and stared out at the water. The calm I'd found in Hawaii didn't disappear, but it did change. It hardened, settled into something steadier, stronger. I packed my suitcase slowly, deliberately. I wasn't running anymore. I was going home. Home didn't feel like home when I walked back into my apartment. The air was stale, untouched, exactly as I'd left it. Clean, quiet, controlled. I set my suitcase by the door and stood there for a long moment, listening. No chaos, no crying children, no accusations echoing off the walls, just silence. I barely had time to unpack before the pounding started. It wasn't a knock, it was a demand. The sound hit the door hard and fast, followed immediately by the metallic click of a key turning in the lock. My stomach dropped. I knew that sound. The emergency key. The one I'd given my mother years ago, just in case. The door flew open. Mom stormed in first, her face flushed, eyes sharp with fury. Lauren and Bethany followed close behind, crowding my entryway like an advancing front. The calm I'd carried home from Hawaii evaporated in seconds. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Lauren screamed, not even pretending to be polite. "You ruined everything. Everything." I closed the door behind them slowly, deliberately. If they noticed the lack of apology, they didn't comment on it. "We were humiliated," Bethany snapped. "Standing outside your apartment with 6 kids and nowhere to go? Do you know how that looked?" I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching them unload weeks' worth of rage into my living room. The same room where I'd babysat their children countless times. The same room where I'd canceled plans, moved meetings, rearranged my life for their convenience. "Greg and Brandon refused to stay home," Bethany continued, her voice shaking. "They suddenly had important business trips. So Lauren had to stay behind with all 6 kids while we went to the lodge." Lauren glared at me. "I missed Mom's birthday because of you." Mom stepped forward, voice trembling with indignation. "Your father couldn't even enjoy himself. We spent the whole trip talking about how you betrayed us, how you let the family down." They talked over each other, accusations piling up so fast they blurred together. Ruined birthday, crying children, embarrassment, disappointment. The more they spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't about my absence. It was about the inconvenience it caused them. Something inside me snapped, but not in the way they expected. I laughed. The sound cut through the room like a blade. They froze, staring at me as if I'd lost my mind. "What's so funny?" Mom demanded, her face darkening. "What could possibly be funny about this?" I wiped tears from my eyes, not of sadness, but disbelief. "Do you hear yourselves?" Lauren scoffed. "This isn't a joke." "No," I agreed, my laughter fading as my voice steadied. "It's absurd," Bethany sputtered. "Absurd? You abandoned your family." "No," I said calmly. "You planned an entire trip without asking me. You took my money. You told me to take time off work. And you decided, without a single conversation, that I'd be your childcare." Mom frowned, genuinely confused. "But you've always helped." "And that's the problem," I said. "Because I always helped, you stopped seeing me as a daughter or a sister. You saw me as a solution." "That's not true," Lauren said, but her voice wavered. "Then why didn't you include me?" I asked. "Why didn't you ask if I wanted to go? Why did you assume I'd be happy sitting in a room with 6 kids while everyone else celebrated?" No one answered. Mom's expression hardened. "You're being selfish." I felt something finally break free inside my chest. "No," I said quietly. "You're being selfish. This entire situation exists because you expected me to sacrifice myself again. And when I didn't, you panicked." Mom straightened, her voice cold. "If this is how you feel, then maybe I don't have a daughter named Marissa anymore." The words landed heavily, but they didn't destroy me. I nodded once. "If that's what you need, Mom, then so be it." The room went silent. They left not long after, slamming the door behind them. I stood there long after their footsteps faded, breathing slowly, grounding myself. 8 weeks passed. No calls, no apologies. Just passive-aggressive social media posts. Family should always come first. Some people only think about themselves. A few months ago, those words would have gutted me. Now I scrolled past them with something close to peace. I joined a hiking group, booked a trip to Italy without asking anyone's permission, deleted the family group chat without announcement or explanation. Sometimes I thought about my nieces and nephews. I miss them, but not the way they'd been used against me. I still had the emergency key. I should have mailed it back. But for now, it sat in a drawer, an artifact of a life I'd finally outgrown. 8 weeks of silence will teach you things no argument ever could. At first, I waited for the phone to ring. Not because I planned to apologize, I was past that, but because some stubborn, hopeful part of me still believed someone would call to ask how I was, to say, "This got out of hand," to acknowledge, even quietly, that lines had been crossed. The call never came. Instead, my family chose the indirect route. Mom posted first. A photo of herself smiling beside a bouquet of flowers captioned, "Some people forget that family should always come first." The comments filled quickly. Sympathy, validation, heart emojis from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. Lauren followed a few days later. A picture of Jackson on her hip, eyes tired but righteous. Blessed to have people who understand sacrifice. Bethany's was the longest. A paragraph about toxic people who destroy family harmony by thinking only of themselves. She didn't tag me. She didn't need to. A few months ago, those posts would have hollowed me out. I would have reread every word, imagined every judgment, wondered if maybe, just maybe, they were right. But something had changed. I'd changed. Instead of rereading, I went for a walk. The Cascade foothills were crisp that morning, the air sharp and clean. I joined a local hiking group, a decision that once would have felt indulgent, irresponsible. Saturdays used to belong to my family's emergencies. Now they belonged to me. As we climbed, a woman beside me chatted about her upcoming trip to Portugal. Another complained good-naturedly about sore calves. No one asked what I could do for them. No one assumed my time belonged to them. It was easy. That night, I booked a trip to Italy for the spring. Florence, Rome, the Amalfi Coast. I didn't check anyone else's calendar. I didn't ask permission. I saw a good deal and took it. The quiet joy of that still surprised me. Sometimes, in softer moments, I thought about the kids. About Parker asking why Auntie Marissa wasn't answering. About Lily reaching for me out of habit. I missed them, but not the way they'd been used. Not as leverage or guilt or obligation. I hoped that someday, when they were older, they'd recognize the pattern for what it was. That they'd learn earlier than I had that love doesn't mean erasing yourself. One evening, Ethan came over with takeout and found me sitting at the kitchen table, the old emergency key resting in front of me. "You still have that?" he asked gently. I nodded. "I keep meaning to mail it back, but you haven't." I turned the key over in my fingers. It feels symbolic, like proof of how much access I gave them, how much of myself. He didn't push. He never did. That night, after he left, I placed the key in an envelope. I wrote my parents' address neatly on the front. Then I stopped. I slid the envelope into a drawer instead, not because I was waiting for reconciliation, but because I no longer needed closure from them. The boundary already existed. Whether they acknowledged it or not didn't change its reality. Weeks later, I deleted the family group chat. No announcement, no explanation, just a quiet exit. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was spacious. I filled it with dinners that lasted as long as I wanted, with mornings that began without dread, with plans that belonged solely to me. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't bracing for disappointment or preparing to be needed. I wasn't managing anyone else's emotions. I wasn't translating my worth into usefulness. I was just living. People like to misuse the word selfish. They apply it to anyone who stops overextending, who chooses rest, who refuses to be consumed for the comfort of others. But I've learned the difference. Selfishness is taking without regard for others. Self-respect is refusing to disappear for them. My family still tells their version of the story. I know this because distant relatives still glance at me differently at the rare gatherings I attend. I let them. I don't correct the narrative. The truth doesn't need defending anymore. I know who I was, the reliable one, the responsible one, the invisible one, and I know who I am now. My name is Marissa Hale. I'm 34 years old. I have a career I earned, a life I built, and something I'd gone my entire adulthood without realizing I was allowed to have. Freedom. And this time, I'm not giving it up for anyone.